Roger and his colleague to do an in-depth examination of what the STP, the Sustainability and Transformation Plan, would really mean for us in North West London. So Roger's going to start off by giving us that review of the STP.
Can you hear me? So, the first thing I would like to say is I commend you reading our report, which went to the Council and gives a full discussion of all the issues that I'm going to be briefly talking about today. And it gives our advice to the Council on its reaction to the STP. We were asked to give a critical review of the Sustainability and Transformation Planning process, the STP process, STP will keep cropping up. It is very critical. We see no point in mincing our words about this. Unfortunately, my co-authors, John Lister and Sean Boyle, can't be here this evening, but we've agreed that there's three things that we want to communicate around why the STP process matters so much, and around the STP content and its relationship to shaping a healthier future, and we consider why local NHS leaders seem to be so determined to pursue the STP and the SaHF. And I'll conclude with a few words of advice. So, why does the STP process matter so much? It's been said to us that it's just about joint planning with extra resources thrown into social care. Right. Can you? Yeah, right. Well, it's not about joint planning with extra resources thrown in. What it seems to be about, and these are not our words, but the words of their architect, Simon Stevens, it's about removing the local veto. That means you, local people, communities, councillors, campaigners. It's been enormously frustrating for NHS leaders that they've not been able to proceed with their plans as they wanted to. They just wanted to go out and transform services for over 2 million people without a business plan, without Treasury permission, and without persuading the people in North West London they know what they're doing. They face the risk of judicial review if they don't do things properly. And that's where the STP comes in. Once the organisations in North West London sign up to the STP, then the plan is that formal authority will be delegated, executives appointed, and a new non-accountable organisation will be willed into existence to drive through the plan, and there'll be nothing anybody can do about it. It may seem incredible, but that's what's at stake. That's why our advice was for local authorities to refuse to sign up to the STP process. So, what about the contents of the STP itself? Well, it's nothing more than the discredited Shaping a Healthier Future, SaHF, repackaged. Except this time, there's no pretense it is about planning for the needs of local people over the long term. The STP only projects forward 5 years, and its priority is cutting costs and eliminating provider deficits. And it's all to be done in an incredibly short time. It will mean the closure of almost 600 beds, starting with Ealing and then coming for Charing Cross, even though the population in North West London is projected to grow by 26% in the next 25 years. You can argue about that, but it's still going to be a hell of a lot more people. It will mean the sale of land and buildings valued at up to £1 billion, and it will mean the further closures of A&E facilities, despite current facilities not coping. And it promises, incredibly, that demand for hospital treatment can be reduced by up to 20%. even while actual demand is rising. How is it going to be possible? It relies on heroic and unsubstantiated claims that ill health can be prevented and hospital treatment avoided by caring the community and people looking after themselves. The problem is that there's no evidence that this can be achieved. How do we know? Well, we've examined the evidence put forward in the STP. There's 3 pages of references that they have at the back. Half of them are spurious, many irrelevant, and some deliberately misleading. After 4 years of work on reconfiguring and reducing hospital services, at the cost of tens of millions of pounds in management consultancy fees, and around £200 million in total, which incidentally is far in excess of the cumulative deficits in North West London, what we find is that there's no evidence to justify their claims to be able to reduce demand or the plans being put forward. And we're not alone in saying this. The NHS Confederation, the Nuffield Trust, the Health Service Journal, Learned Academic Studies, the chairman of the Health Select Committee, the King's Fund, and only last week the National Audit Office, have all exposed the lack of substance to the claims that new models of care can save any money. Instead, they argue that additional resources for health and social care are required. We believe that many local leaders would be prepared to speak out too, if they felt able to do so, but instead there's an enforced wall of silence and secrecy. Why then are local leaders so keen on promoting the STP and the SaHF? For some, it's all about the promise of additional funding for social and community care. But the catch is in the conditions laid down. The STP links future funding to all bodies in North West London, first agreeing to the STP process and structures. And then there's a condition that the providers have got to restore financial balance. Currently, Imperial and North West London hospitals are projecting over £100 million worth of deficits. On top of that, it's assumed that compelling business cases for additional investments of over £2.2 billion can be made. Then the STP assumes that despite the lack of NHS capital, that Treasury or the private sector will provide this level of resources at economic rates. In our view, the chances of all these events taking place as planned are slim to remote, while the chances of slippage and of cost escalation are great, making the danger of harm to local people all but inevitable. Now for others, they tell us that there's no alternative to these plans. Our answer to that is that they should look at the do minimum option. It's a technical term here, so do excuse me, but it means avoiding large transitional costs and large capital outlays, building on the existing arrangements and improving in those areas that most need improvement. It would be much cheaper to invest directly in improving staffing levels in existing A&E departments and tearing down and rebuilding fewer new units. And it's worth saying again that the cumulative costs of the planning for SaHF, now the STP processes, are far in excess of any deficits that exist in North West London. Why then? I'm afraid it seems to be a combination of pragmatic short-term self-interest that's motivating people. Providers are looking to cannibalise the weakest hospitals to save themselves. Commissioners seek to divert resources into their own facilities, and specialist hospitals look to attract capital to renew their aged facilities. NHS England are acting under orders to sell surplus land. Local government offices are looking to the opportunity to bring in additional health resources into funding social care to make up for the heavy cuts in direct government support. I shouldn't forget there's 200 people directly involved in the programme as well who've got a vested interest. But we doubt whether anybody actually believes in the rhetoric. is being used to support the plans. So, our words of advice are, we remain very sceptical that the Shaping a Healthier Future plans can ever present a business case that can attract support. Our advice is clear. The local authorities should not agree to the STP process. It's the only way to prevent local hospitals being closed. Secondly, we believe that funds that are draining local services at the moment to support the SaHF and STP process, and there's over 200 staff directly employed, should be used to support direct services. And we believe that new plans should be drawn up based on a do minimum scenario, avoiding large-scale capital investment with genuine involvement and consultation. And that was our advice to the Council.